The galaxy burns. The heretic falls. And the Emperor protects. Welcome, Imperial citizens, to The Emperor Protects. My name is Doug, along with me, my co-host, of course, Dan. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, my friend, and you're well?
I am. It's been a crazy summer, but
Yes.
Winter and summer and winter again, but
Right.
But we're trudging on. I'm doing well. My wife's awesome, and we're pushing through. So today we are talking all about another one of these founding books, one of those that gives us sort of a pivotal story in the Horus Heresy, and that is Fulgrim. Mm-hmm. Do you have any, I don't know, we'll say nostalgic thoughts about Fulgrim, seeing as how it's old enough to go to school and stuff as a book?
I think it's the thing that always, we'll talk about it eventually, but the whole concept of the noise marines and using sound and stuff for some reason, in my early days of 40K many years ago, that just it just hit me as a science fiction concept. And as a science person, it was boom. And these are the guys, the Emperor's Children. It also struck me as interesting about Fulgrim. We're going to talk about him today. The whole story of this legion is so different, I think, this is my opinion, of the other traitor legions. And so that kind of hits me whenever I hear Emperor's Children. I just get these bizarre, twisted thoughts in my head.
Oh, wow. Okay. Glad we got that recorded.
Yes, of course.
For me, this is one of my earlier introductions to Warhammer. Actually, I went straight from reading. So I didn't understand when I saw Horus Heresy series that it was a contained thing, and so I went straight from, I think it was the Grey Knights Omnibus to Fulgrim. And so that was a bit of a rough ride, but it ended up being one of my favorite 40K books just because it explained to me how and why people fall for Slaanesh, which I was not understanding. If you're someone who, you're just getting into Warhammer, you might go ask on a forum, why would anyone fall for this? And you'll get a ton of meme answers about because we all love sex and all these kinds of things. But the truth is there's a lot of different paths that lead you down that road. And this book explores a ton of them.
Yes.
So much so that me and Dan agreed to put a disclaimer at the front of this video that this book has 8 sub-stories within it. Okay. You're watching the entire, not just the Legion, but the entire exploration fleet. What do they call those things again?
Yeah, the explorator fleets.
Yeah. You're watching the entire thing fall to chaos. And so you have observations from human artists who are aboard the Emperor's Children ships. You have all levels of captains and lieutenants, and it's all bad. Everything goes bad.
Pretty much, yeah.
But Dan tackled this with his normal gusto and made some incredible show notes for us. So he's gonna take us through the path of Fulgrim, which is of course the only book we're sticking with today. So let's kick it off here. Let's see, we got our notes. Do you have any preamble or anything like that you want me to
I think that the thing about this book is it's the story of the fall of a primark and the descent of a very noble legion, actually, when they started.
Yes.
Into just unspeakable corruption. The depth of the corruption that goes on with the Emperor's Children, again, to me, is far beyond. It's so much more intrinsic to what they become. And the other thing I think that's interesting, again, this is my opinion, unlike the other traitor legions, I think the Emperor's Children just absolutely embraced the intensity of the corruption they were undergoing.
Oh, yeah, they went all in immediately.
You think about, for example, Khorne's guys, you think about the World Eaters, they really struggled with their Primarch going through what he did and becoming what they became. You think about Mortarian's guys, these those Marines didn't want to feel just unsufferable pain and become physically correct. They didn't want that.
Mm-hmm.
They never asked for that. They, once it happened, it was good. But and think about the Thousand Sons. Oh my gosh. Talk about tragedy. They never ever expected to end up, where they did when they ended up at the end of the book on the planet of the sorcerers. They were like, what the hell is this?
Yep.
But Emperor's Children, this is all good, man. I want more.
Yes, this was the plan. I didn't see it ending this way, but I'm really glad it did.
Yes. Yeah.
So our tale really kind of picks up as one of these explorer fleets is moving into a system that is controlled by a xenospecies, aliens, named the Laer.
Yeah.
Or do you want to back up before then?
Yeah,
or?
I think the Laer is it. One of the things I do want to talk about very briefly is to kind of put into context who the Emperor's children were before Fulgrim.
Oh, yes, please.
Because as a legion, again, something very unique. They only had at one point about 200 Marines left. And think of the context of that when you think about other legions in the Heresy time frame that had tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Marines. 200 Marines. That's it. That was the entire chapter. And reuniting with Fulgrim and using his gene seed was what saved this legion, which, interestingly enough, we're going to talk about a couple of nicknames here. It's the whole Phoenix Rising type of book. And so that's where Fulgrim got his nickname, the Phoenician. Mm-hmm. So, but when you think about what they were, what they became, I think that's important. And the other thing that is interesting is that early on, they were very much known for their diplomatic skills, and that's exactly the opposite of what they became.
Yeah.
The last thing is that they were the only legion to be allowed to wear the, Imperial Aquila so prominently right in the middle of their breastplates.
Yes, that's the eagle, right?
Right. Yep, the eagle. And it's what's interesting. It's consistent with their arrogance and their obsession of being the best. We're the best guys because we get to wear it in the middle. And it was just a legion-wide thing for them. Not that other legions didn't have Imperial Eagles somewhere on their kit. I mean, Garrow had the big eagle, but it was an honor. It was something that was special if you had that.
Right.
But the Emperor's Children, it was everywhere. And then the last thing I think that's important, especially with this story, is unlike a lot of the other legions, the Emperor's Children absolutely welcomed the Remembrancers, all the photographers, the artists, the musicians, and the writers, and they were given access on a level far beyond any other remembrance. I mean, they were part of private ceremonies and rituals.
Yep.
And when you think about, though, what the Emperor's Children was, this wasn't a surprise because they wanted everybody to know. They wanted the spotlight. They wanted to be, out there. And this is the best way for people to know how awesome they were.
Absolutely, yeah. Have the most people recording your great deeds, and then when it's all over, everyone's talking about you. Who the heck's, Ferrus Manus? He didn't do anything.
Right. As we're going to find out.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Foreshadow.
So anyway, I just thought those would be some interesting points for listeners, to understand about who they were before moving on to and talk to us about the Laer, because they are frightening.
Yeah, so the Laer are this very strange species of Xenos, but to call them a species is a bit odd because as they're fighting them, a few things are going to stick out for us Warhammer, we'll say seasoned vets, as far as looking for signs of chaos. They have these long serpent-like bodies for the most part, but they also have different substrains of the Laer will modify and change their body genetically and physically to do different things. So there's a swimmer variant. There's one that has wings and it's like a raptor in the sky. Their warrior caste has vocal weapons where they can scream and emit so much sound that it hurts people. All those kinds of things. So they're fighting this very exotic enemy, and the planet that they're fighting on I believe is it this one the Coral City, or am I mixing my?
I can't remember. I think the Coral City might have been the one on
Istvan 3.
3.
Yeah, you're right.
But I know that it's their capital city.
Yeah, it's an ocean planet with like these big platform cities that are built on, and so we meet the Emperor's children in the middle of a hyper aggressive campaign. The Laer were supposed to take forever to root out because they're so dangerous. Mm-hmm. And Fulgrim walks in. He's like, "We're gonna take this planet in a month," and so. It's a little bit garbled of a narrative because I'm looking at like all the different perspectives you have here, and it's like really that decision is echoed through the artists who are willing to go, wanting to go down to the planet, the captains who are organizing, and the ground troops. Like those are all perspectives that we have. Mm-hmm. But this obsession that he has of being the best is what drives him to be like, we're not just going to do it, we're going to do it so well that people will struggle to believe how great the Emperor's children are. It's that hubris starts sinking in. So the Laer, they fight them. They really actually seem to enjoy fighting them, probably more than you want. As they're striking down the Laer, some of them are having, shall we say, not child-appropriate responses to pain.
Yes.
As in, they seem to be enjoying it.
There's a lot of Adult Swim in this book. There's
yes. But you know, for the most part, they're like they don't understand the Laer, and they're trying to like figure them out in a meaningful way. At the same time. I don't know how much you want me to jump around here, but
whatever you
okay. At the same time, they're also looking at them like, wow, these guys are like amazing fighters. How do they do that? And they start getting this idea into their head of modifying themselves. And it starts with just a few people, but I'll leave that tidbit for later.
Yes. Yep. I think one of the interesting things too is that Fulgrim, as you just said, we're going to wipe them out faster and better than anybody else.
Yes.
Well, the casualty rates were unbelievable.
Yeah.
And there was some reference to a number, and I think it was an average of like 20 Marines died per engagement. And you think about, for example, when Logan assaulted the Siren Hold, Loken assaulted the Siren Hold in the one book, he suffered like 0 casualties, right?
Yeah.
And so that this hyper aggression that Fulgrim uses to drive his legion resulted in a, as you said, relatively short campaign, but it was incredibly costly, and there's really nobody's even paying any attention to it.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
It was weird. So the idea was like we're going to do this unprecedented thing simply because no one else could do it, which is like that's not a justification for I mean, we know that the Imperium like watches how long it takes for wars to happen because the word bearers got censored for going too slow.
Yes.
But when the establishment's like, okay, guys, take your time. You've got 3 years, and he's like, nah, like nope, don't be doing that.
And hey, you're ahead of schedule. We don't care that it cost you this many Marines. There's plenty to go.
Pretty much is how it panned out.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things here too is that we end up in this book, because it's book 5, I believe, of the actual. So it's the book right after Flight of the Eisenstein.
Yeah.
Is we end up meeting some people we've met before. We meet Saul Tarvitz, who we know from Istvan 3. We meet Lucius. Oh, God, Lucius, of course. And then the most despicable person in this entire book, who is Eidolon, who is like the supreme captain of the Emperor's children. We meet all these people, all of them again, because we've already read or talked about all of them before.
Right.
This obviously is before the events of Istvan 3. Because Eidolon isn't enhanced yet, and Tarvitz and Lucius are still 2 captains who get along and those things. The other character, though, Doug, that I find amazing. I still, not that I like him as a character, but I think he's so cool, is Fabius Bile, who is the chief apothecary of the Emperor's Children. And you mentioned earlier how a few of the Emperor's children started kind of playing around with stuff. Fabius Bile is the guy. He like captured some of the Laer. He's using their parts and pieces. He's creating drugs from their, body fluids. And he's like, hey, he sees a Marine like, hey, come over here. Try this stuff. See what it does to you.
Yeah.
And he's also doing the bioenhancement thing, which, again, in Eidolon's case, we know what that is. We know that he saved Garrow from that war singer by using this voice weapon that he had.
Yep.
That Bile had given him. So Fabius Bile is actually, I think, a very important character in terms of driving the Legion towards its corruption.
I would agree.
And the weird thing is, to me, Doug, is that Bile isn't corrupt. It's not like he's chaotic, right? He's just this mad scientist.
That's what I was going to say, is like they not only had him, but he wasn't, I want to say a dominant figure. Like he didn't drive the narrative necessarily. He was kind of a background. So, but they made him so interesting that like, I want to just walk through his lab.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I think, again, given what the descent into corruption was, he literally was the driver of this in a lot of ways.
So he basically was like, I kind of see him as like an evil version of from 40K Belisarius Call.
Oh yeah, sure.
Where it's just like, I'm going to figure out the secrets of the Emperor's gene seed. That's just going to happen. No one's going to stop me.
I'm going to make really good Marines even better.
Exactly.
So back to the battlefield. What was going on? I think we're talking about the capital city.
Oh, yes. We have an epic struggle where all of the companies are struggling to make a final push. Essentially, Fulgrim is like, hey, we're going to do this. We're kind of working towards one big final assault. One of the things they realize is like the Laer seem to be like deliberately trying to draw fire away from a singular point. And so they're looking at this and they're like, what is it? Like, is it their HQ or like, what could this mean? And Fulgrim comes to the conclusion it's a church. And so all of these aliens are fighting to protect this church. And so that's their last stand and whatever. You okay if I jump into that?
Oh, please. Yeah, it is central.
Yes. When they defeat the Laer, one of the sub-stories that comes relevant is that one of the companies didn't show up on time. They were all supposed to perfectly converge on the Laer in a fiery, storm of the Emperor's justice, and everything's supposed to be perfectly timed like a show. And one of the companies didn't arrive because it was an unreasonable ask. They had way too much resistance. They were never going to make it there. But that becomes important because that company gets guilt-shamed later into accepting some augmentations to help out. So we'll get to that.
Yes.
Fulgrim makes his way into the Laer Temple. There's some really cool fight scenes. I like the Laer as an enemy. And when they walk into the temple, I feel like the book spent a really good amount of time on this scene because everything going forward from here is the people who were in the temple and the people who weren't. And that's a huge divide in characters. So the people who, say, for example, our company of heroes who was late because they had far too many people to kill on the way, they didn't experience it. So you have a whole group of captains that's like, what are you guys talking about? Inside the Laer Temple, so we'll start moving into that, they encounter a whole bunch of weird stuff. First of all, there's a big spire in the center. It's a raucous of clashing, intense, like hot pink colors, basically. Pinks and purples and greens, everything. It's a riot of sound and smell, and the Emperor's children love it. They just think it's like the coolest place ever. And anyone who went there, pretty much for the foreseeable future is changed in a massive way. No one walks out of there feeling great.
And what they saw, one of the things they saw was just this huge Adult Swim thing going on with the Laer, who are obviously under the influence of some kind of narcotic.
Yeah.
They're just super drugged out of their minds, and they're just. And the other thing that was there's two other real big finds, but one of them is, and I love the way Graham describes this. It's a multi-armed creature, and he doesn't say what it is, but it's got like a bull-headed, look, and
Yep.
he is clearly, because this is a meta thing, he is very clearly describing a keeper of secrets.
Yes.
Right? And you're like, wow. Like, that is the perfect description if somebody didn't know what this thing looked like. And then they go, oh, that's what you were talking about. That's one of those on the cover of that box of that model. That's a keeper of secret. Yeah. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just, dancing around, worshiping, doing all kinds of, like I said, Adult Swim stuff. So
yes.
The other piece of this is that there was this unbelievable silver sword that was in the middle of this room. And, of course, weapons, Emperor's children, one of their things is, as a legion, wanting to be better, they always try to improve their weapons, or they had no problem taking tactics or weapons from their enemies and incorporating those things into their own tactics and their own armory. And so Fulgrim sees this thing, and the way I was reading this sword literally just compelled him to pick it up.
Yep.
And it focused on him, which I thought was interesting because there were all these other people in the room. And Doug, for me, it was like interesting. Did this thing, and we'll talk about it very shortly, was a demon. It was a demon-possessed weapon. Did it recognize that Fulgrim was the most vulnerable to its, machinations, or did the demon recognize he was the strongest? So I think it's interesting. I think it's the latter, is what I think. That he recognized Fulgrim as someone that, oh yeah, I can work this guy.
I'm not sure. We learn a little bit more information about the character, we'll say, in the sword here later on. So we'll revisit that.
But it's weird because he feels this compulsion. Fulgrim does, but after he picks up the sword, it's like it just goes away. Like all of a sudden, it's just this beautiful weapon he's holding, and you very quickly, as we just talked about, realize that there's a demon possessing this weapon. And it is, of course, because it's the Heresy, the kind of demon that whispers in someone's ear all the time to get them to do whatever they want them to do. And we've seen this many times in the Heresy. So
yes, and he takes it as his own conscience, like he's having an internal dialogue.
It's just rationalizing it away. It's just so stupid, man.
I know. You're talking to yourself.
You're a primark, man. Do you not understand? That's one of the things I didn't get about this book was how, when I think about how the other primarchs responded to even real demons talking to them, demons that have manifested, they're very aware of what's going on. Fulgrim was just like, hey, here's this voice. It seemed like he had no concept of what this demonic entity was or what it was trying to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I feel like the other ones at least understand the idea that like certain artifacts have power or the warp exists and we shouldn't mess with it. I feel like that came up quite a few times in the earlier books.
Yes. Yeah. So is there anything else about the temple? Because again, as you said earlier, we're going to just segue to a whole nother thing now.
Yeah, no, that's all I really had for the temple. It was just, it was an aggressive push, and it defines the character. So who went to the temple and who didn't becomes important.
And just really quickly, the Remembrancers, the humans, went to the temple as well.
Yes,
not just the Marines, and that is a really important piece too, because as the Marines were affected, as you said, the humans were affected so much more deeply by this.
I would say so. I don't know.
As we will find out.
Yes.
So next we segue to our buddy Ferrus Manus, the primark of the Iron Hands, and he kind of reaches out to Fulgrim for an assist. He's dealing with this group of people called the Diasporax, and I found it interesting because we get this call for help, and the friendship between Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus is so fascinating because they are totally dialectically opposed personality-wise. And it was interesting because there's two little kind of anecdotal stories that were told. One is how early on in their relationship they had this contest to see who could make a better weapon.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, they each made a weapon that they themselves would not be as good using. So they're just like, hey, it's a tie. Let's just exchange weapons. And I'm going, it was just weird, right?
Well,
but now the second,
I think
go ahead.
I think the idea behind that, if I'm not mistaken, so someone correct me, but was that they wanted to create the best weapon, and so to trick each other, they tried to make the weapon that they thought the other would like more. So Ferrus Manus made Fulgrim a sword beyond measure, and Fulgrim made Ferrus Manus a hammer.
Right.
Of the gods.
And then the exchange weapons.
Yes.
But then there's another story about how Ferrus got his nickname, which I found more fun, in that they were both in the Imperial Palace when they were installing these, I think the giant Space Marine statues, but it was some kind of huge sculptures that they were installing in the palace. And they were both there, and of course they had totally different reactions. Fulgrim, who is this lover of art and whatever else like that, creativity, he was just like, oh, this is so beautiful. This is amazing. And Ferrus was just like, oh, this is totally worthless. Like, what's the point?
Yes.
And so...
like every couple arguing at Home Depot over lawn decorations.
And Fulgrim just goes... you are such a Gorgon that you can't appreciate this stuff. But then right away when I'm listening to this, it's like, oh, that's it. That's his nickname.
Yep.
That's where he got his nickname. And it was so cool. And obviously it stuck. But I never knew until I re-listened to it. I don't remember that.
Oh,
and
really?
It was like this cool epiphany of where Ferrus Manus got his name. So I love that little story.
Yes.
It was pretty cool, and just the way, as you said, it was the whole Home Depot meme, like,
yep.
You are such a whatever.
Our lawn doesn't need to look pretty for the neighbors. We live here for ourselves, and you're like, oh my god,
right? It's kind of what it is. I thought as part of this whole thing that was interesting how the sword was continuing now to play mind games with Fulgrim. For example, Fulgrim, at this point, he was looking at the sword, admiring it. And the gem inside the sword kind of caught his eye. And he was like, that gem kind of looks plain compared to the rest of the sword. And for a moment, he was like, yeah, I need to replace this gem. And all of a sudden, our little buddy, who obviously the demon was in the gem, that's where he was in the sword, is going, you don't need to do that. Don't worry about that.
Yep.
And Fulgrim was like, I don't know. Nah, it's fine. It looks great.
Yep. He doesn't realize he's being led by the nose.
Okay, here we go again, where Fulgrim just being totally unaware. Anyway. Where do you want to go next with this?
Let's see. So this Diasporax that he helps Ferrus Manus hunt down. Basically, it's a chance to introduce us to their brotherhood and show us that Fulgrim actually is really good. Like, he came up with a cunning plan to hunt this spacefaring race, and they prosecuted it. It was cool. It was a good moment of brotherhood, and everyone was having a great time. Let's see what happens next here.
And I don't know if I can't remember if this was earlier or later than this thing, but there's another kind of flashback or whatever, flash to Fabius Bile again. Mm-hmm. And it talks about how he literally discovered a way to bypass the pain receptors in the brain. And he has discovered a way to reroute the pain to the pleasure centers.
Yes.
So, put your hand over the fire. Ow, that hurts. But he's got him thinking, you put your hand over the fire and it's like, whoa, actually that feels kind of good.
I'm going to take this fire out on a date.
And it's so twisted. It's like, Slanesh.
Yes.
Right. And we talked about before that he distills a drug. He starts with one, of course, there are many. And the thing about this drug that he distills from the Laer corpses is it enhances strength. It enhances reflexes, so it's a good thing, other than the side effects early on. But he offers it to Legionnaires who are like, oh, this is awesome, cool. And the other part of that is that I think is interesting is all this is going on, and Fulgrim has no problem with any of it.
No.
It's like, no, this is cool. Make my guys better. We're already cool. We're already the best. We can be the bestest of best, and just, it's all right. It's cool. Any other Primarch would be like, what the hell are you doing to my sons? But Fulgrim's like, nope.
Yep.
It's all cool.
Combat droids are cool with me.
Yeah, it's all good.
But what's interesting is like the way that happens, and listeners, we're kind of filling in a bunch of backstories because these lore tidbits come from a lot of different perspectives.
Yes.
But one of the things I like is that, initially he does his test on Eidolon. Eidolon's like, if you're going to break the rules, I'm going to be the first, right? Like, I want to be the best. I want to be the whatever.
Yes.
So Eidolon gets that honor. But then from there, he starts, like, Fulgrim starts basically sending warriors that kind of failed him in that Laer attack to get worked on, of like, you guys need improvement, which is different than like, I'm already the best, make me better. Because it's one of those things that like you can justify, like, oh yeah, I dishonored my Primarch and this is how he says I can regain my honor. Cool, I'll do it, whatever. But it quickly gets out of hand. They're now making all kinds of new organs. Combat drugs, which is a big one.
Yeah, it's just scary stuff. The other thing, just real briefly with as you said, we're going to be jumping around. I'm glad you gave listeners that warning ahead. We talked about the fact that some of the humans, some of the remembrances that showed up in the temple, and there is one in particular that they mention a few times. Her name is Serena de Angela. She is an artist. And of course, the moment any human walks into this temple, they are corrupted. They're done. But each one of them kind of travels a different path to corruption. What's interesting about her is that the first manifestations is that she begins to incorporate body fluids into her paints.
Yes. Yeah, she's looking for a red to capture a sunset, and then she like stabs her arm by accident, and that's a really good red color. I love it. Oh, no, it wasn't an accident at first. But
Of course, but I know what you mean. Yeah, and the others are just totally overstimulated. Their morality is just ripped away. There's a musician who records the music in the temple, and she begins to descend into madness. She's like, I think, wasn't she like a director of an orchestra? She was like a conductor or something. And so
Fulgrim got all the best artists in the world
composing special music, and it's just, oh man, it's just so Emperor's Children. This is just crazy.
It is astoundingly Emperor's Children.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that even the remembrancers are part of this whole thing. So we talked about Fulgrim with the voices in his head. That's going to be a continuing theme here. But the Emperor's Children at this point have rejoined Ferrus Manus because they had kind of gone away from him for a little while. And now they're back in the fight with the Diasporax. And Fulgrim, of course, wants to look better than his brother Ferrus. And he goes on this like suicide run.
Mm-hmm.
He gets on a Firebird of all things. And he's going to run it at the enemy command ship because his idea is, hey, I'm going to cut the head off the snake. I'm going to kill the admiral in charge of everything. And he goes on this suicidal run. And the description of all this is very cool. Graham does such a magnificent job with it.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it's one Firebird, and the enemy fleet, these Diasporax guys, they are really good at space combat. They are the equals of Space Marines easily. And so they target and get him kind of bracketed in this ship, and it's about to, you're about to see one of the primarks die, and all of a sudden, Ferrus Manus ships intervene and kind of interpose themselves. And instead of being grateful, Ferrus Manus or Fulgrim just uses this opportunity as his brother's flagship is just getting beaten to hell, not destroyed, by the way, because we're talking about Iron Hands ships here, which are basically giant blocks of antimatter.
Yeah, basically,
engine, right?
It's a flying brick, yeah.
But he doesn't stop. He doesn't say, thanks, brother, or whatever. He just keeps going. And so as a reward for his petulance, he gets to the command deck, and he's killing people on the way. He sees that, like, all the crew on the command deck are dead. Everything's ripped up. He's going, whoa, wait a minute. And this captain named Solomon Demeter has already arrived and has captured and killed all of the command crew. And Fulgrim is just absolutely enraged and stomps off the bridge.
Yep.
And at this point, his magical sword is like, hey, all these other people are bad people that don't want you to be successful. They made you look like a fool. They stole your glory, your brother, Captain Demeter. These are all bad people. And just the descent into madness just continues here. And you have to feel so badly for these other people around him. But I don't know what your thought is, but he has just become, I don't know what point in the book it was, Doug, but he just becomes so unaware of his surroundings and not even caring what's going on around him.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Like by the end of the book, I felt like I didn't see where that turn happened, but it definitely did. Like he just becomes more and more oblivious as things go on.
And I don't know what it is. Maybe he's just so enraptured and so into the Slanesh thing that, but that whole piece, that whole scene with him on this run, just, I thought, to me, was like a final piece of, he's gone. He's not going to change. Scary.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, it's not about the crusade anymore. It's about Fulgrim.
Yes. Great way to put it.
Yep.
Now, again, whoop, change lanes. we segue to an Eldar farce here.
Yeah.
We are familiar with, not only in 30K, but 40K players will recognize Eldrad Uthron.
Yes.
40K players will recognize him as the Eldar who saved Robute Gilliman and got him into that suit of armor that kept him from dying. Other things he has done. That's the thing I think that a lot of people in 40K will recognize him as.
But we don't thank Xeno, so,
Of course not. Of course not. He's the one who warned Gilliman that the primordial, enemy is not, Annihilator is not the ultimate enemy, those kind of. So he's a pretty prominent individual. But what's weird, again, in the story is this just pops up out like, what? Like,
yeah.
And he has this meeting with Fulgrim, and it's just so bizarre. Like, there's a battle that goes on because he thinks that he can deal with Fulgrim because he saw Fulgrim essentially bypass all these maiden worlds that he could have destroyed. And maiden worlds, as we both know, are very, crucial to the Eldar. They just worship these maiden worlds because they're their chance for redemption. And but he realizes then all of a sudden why he missed the demon sword. By the way, Eldrad missed it early on. I don't get, but he realizes what Fulgrim is, and that he senses the whole Slanesh thing going on, who is the ultimate evil to the Eldar.
Yep.
There's a battle. He doesn't, of course, bring anywhere near enough troops to kill a Primarch and like 20 of his Terminator elite.
Oh, he tries though, man.
Oh, he does. He's even got he's even got a, Eldar avatar who, by the way, Fulgrim basically chokes this Eldar avatar out.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, it was a pretty dang good fight.
Like, what? He's a lava monster. How are you doing that? It's like, I'm a Primarch and I'm cool.
Exactly.
And then basically Fulgrim leaves. He goes back and virus bombs all the planets that he missed. And it's interesting reading. It's cool battle, as you just said. But like, if you took those pages out of the book, you wouldn't miss anything. Like, there's no impact on again, this is IMO, there's no real impact. I'm lost at what this adds to the overall story.
I think the idea was like, we want to have a 40K kind of presence reminder, and
okay,
I think Oath One does that. But yeah, I agree. This is one that would be on the chopping block for me as an editor.
Yeah, not that I didn't enjoy it. I think we both did. It was very cinematic and very cool what happened. And Eldar are interesting. They're always an interesting race to have. And it's funny because when you read this book, it was written a long time ago. They're not Eldari yet, so you're seeing Eldar and you're like, maybe if you're just coming to this book for the first time, listeners, and you're a 40K person, you're going, who are the Eldar?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't remember them. Like, no, they're the Eldari. They're the early version of.
Yes, yes.
Anyway, so at this point in the story, Fulgrim has absolutely gone crazy. I'm myself there. He is just nuts, man. He has actually commissioned Selena DeAngela to print this, or to paint this massive mural. It's just going to be many meters high and wide. And this is where you just know how loopy she has become. So she is now fully incorporated all kinds of human detritus, not just body fluids, but organs and intestines and stuff into her art. And what you find out about her, how twisted and lost she is she has actually used her murdered lovers are what she has used as the materials.
Yes. Yep.
And you realize in the story that many of the Remembrancers, she is a beautiful woman, and she basically seduces them, kills them, and then harvests their things,
whatever they need.
Yeah, and it's just like so twisted and sick.
She's got like drums of dead people in her room.
Yes,
she's having a day.
Oh man! And at first you're like, "Oh, this woman, is very desirable when you first meet her in the story," and everybody wants to sleep with Selena. Well, if they only knew.
Yeah, basically.
Right. And what happens with the sword demon now when he sees this picture and as it's being made?
Yeah, so at one point the Fulgrim gets a chance to look at it, and of course by this point, because he was in the Laer temple, he sees it as beautiful, and it's like blood and pee and excrement all over the wall, roughly in the shape of a Primarch, and he loves it. But one of the things that happens is whatever demon is in that sword kind of like projects itself onto the painting.
Oh, yes.
And begins it kind of takes it over as like a focal point of like, when you talk to me, you talk to the painting. And so Fulgrim will yell at this painting for hours in his own room at nothing. Just at nothing.
Oh, God. Oh, man. Yeah, it's... But I want to say that it's fascinating the way Graham writes this, and it becomes compelling to read this. Like, you're kind of grossed out, but you're not, because you want to read more about this to see how far this is going to go. I think, which is interesting to me. And so as grotesque and horrible as this all is, it's also fascinating at the same time. And then I start asking myself, like, wait a minute, am I becoming a Slanesh priest? that this isn't bothering me as much anymore.
I definitely like. I mean, not after this reading, but when I first read it, I was like, I want to play an Emperor's Children army. This is the coolest. Like, it's one of the most succinct backstories for a Chaos faction. I love it.
Yes, yeah. And so now we get to the point after this that the demon continues to work Fulgrim, and he's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to let you know in on a secret here. And Horus is considering betraying the Emperor. Mm-hmm. And he's like, the conversation, the way Graham writes this conversation between the demon and Fulgrim, he's like, this demon is just so cool and manipulative. It's like, you know, if that's true, if he's really doing, I don't know that he's doing that. I think he is. Then the Emperor can't be perfect because, and you believe that he's perfect, right, Fulgrim?
Oh, well, yeah.
Right? If he's perfect, why would anybody betray a perfect being? So if he's perfect, then he can't be being betrayed. But if he is being betrayed, he's not perfect. And if he's not perfect, why should you and your legion hold him as a role model?
Yep.
Because what are you, worshiping an imperfect being? It was just brilliant.
Yeah. And
I read that a couple times because the logic flow that the demon was using was so brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And like all of these primarchs, so much of their worldview is built on something so small of like the Emperor is X. It's like, well, yes. You know, it's complicated.
Right? You know, with the timing with this was interesting too, because now all of a sudden Malkador, of all people, arrives on Fulgrim's flagship. And so timing wise, it's like he is sent by the Emperor to talk to Fulgrim because he wants to tell him and see what's going on with Horus. Wants to talk to him about Horus.
Yeah.
There's been some disturbing stories and inconsistencies in Horus's behavior. And you kind of think about Fulgrim going, well, wait a minute. The demon just talked to me about this.
And so Eldrad.
Yeah, and Eldrad. So isn't it interesting that everybody's coming around to talk to me about Horus's betrayal? Well, Fulgrim is kind of directed to check it out. You know, what's going on with Horus? So he takes his fleet and he's silent running with his ships fully armed and ready to go to attack Horus's fleet. And he's actually considering firing on Horus's fleet at this point. And what's weird is you think about how the entire story could end right now.
Yes.
He could absolutely blow Horus's fleet out of space. And yes. No worse the wear, right? It just wouldn't take very long. It's all done. But he's considering this because he's on his command deck, but he's not wearing his demon sword.
Yes.
And so he's actually thinking about doing this, which would be the right thing to do, of course.
Yeah. His insanity is a moment of clarity of like,
which is weird.
Yeah.
Right? It's like without the demon there, he's actually thinking, to a moment of clarity. All of this other stuff, all this corruption and this weird behavior and everything else, all these weird diversions and perversions, they're all gone. It's all been swept away.
Yeah.
But as he's about to push the button, our friend Eidolon arrives. And what's he carrying?
It's the silver sword of the Laer.
No. Like, what? he actually is carrying the sword.
Yes.
You're joking.
No.
And of course, everything just piles back in. And Fulgrim is like, he loses any and all desire to fire.
Yep.
Lovely. Like, Okay.
Well, and it's so funny because in that scene, he's like, I don't remember asking for the sword. And so you get this kind of point of like, did he do it subconsciously? Or was Eidolon like, did the thing whisper to Eidolon, like, hey, go get me?
And that's a good voice, but you just did that well, by the way. It's like, and Eidolon, of course, is the perfect person for the sword to talk to.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's all in.
Yep.
He's probably all in more than Fulgrim even is.
At this point, I would say yes. Him and Lucius are good to go.
They're so down with this. So that whole scene takes place, and you're going, "Oh shoot!" If you're a loyalist, you're going, "Oh come on, Graham! Did you have to do that? You're getting your hopes. You got my hopes up, and now, boom!" And so the result of this is that Fulgrim goes to Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, and Horus. It's kind of weird because Horus thinks that Fulgrim may have arrived here on his flagship to replace him as War Master.
Yes.
And wow, wherever that came from. And Horus, of course, being the master manipulator that he is at this point, because he is obviously, I don't know that he's fully corrupted. I don't think he is at this point. But he's definitely turned against the Emperor.
Yes.
And he spins this beautiful tale, almost like the demon did, and tells Fulgrim that the Emperor is intending to turn over all these worlds that our Marines have conquered to administrators and pencil pushers, and basically turn the legions into a police force.
Yep.
And the way he spins this tale and tells it to Fulgrim, he tells Fulgrim, hey, if you join this, you're not joining a rebellion. You're actually joining a stand against a father who abandoned us.
Yeah.
And abandoned all his sons and returned to Terra and just wants to throw us all, out the door. And again, the dialogue and the writing of this scene is just brilliant to me. It's just masterful.
Yeah, and Horus does spin it as like, the Emperor's doing us a bamboozle. He's going to take everything. We were just temporary instruments. Will be put away.
Mm-hmm.
Because he actually hands out a copy of, is it Letitio Divinitatis?
Yes.
Which we read about in the first few books of like, these are humans who have decided of their own volition to start worshiping the Emperor as deity. Mm-hmm. And so Horus finds this and is basically using it as proof of like, see, he's trying to, kind of infect his own worship inside of humanity. Mm-hmm. And it just all gets twisted and I don't know. It all gets messed up.
Yes. Yep. It's beautiful. And yes. Again, both of these scenes, the manipulation of the demon, the manipulation of Horus, are brilliantly written by Graham. I really, really enjoyed going back and reading it a second time because it was so compelling. Like, if I was there, I would be like, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, and just to kind of put it in perspective of other events, like, Fulgrim was sent because, like, there was just one or two reports that, like, Horus was dead. Right. And it's like, well, you look pretty good for being dead, and now you're talking all kinds of weird stuff. It just, they set the scene very well, I think.
And it's also compelling to me, Doug, that, Horus actually has a good point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm a Chaos player.
It's like, yeah, right? And you're going, maybe this chaos thing isn't so bad for humanity. And I'm reading it going, I understand now the way it was written. And, of course, because of the beautiful and masterful way he does this, he literally has turned Fulgrim. Fulgrim is like, I am on board, man. I understand now, brother.
Ride or die.
And he sends, once he realizes he's turned him, he sends the Phoenician on a mission to try to recruit Ferrus Manus. Now, this part of it to me is totally BS because there is no way that Ferrus Manus, there is no way that these guys can even believe that Ferrus Manus is going to turn.
Right.
Of all the Primarchs, maybe except for Dorn, there is no way they're going to turn Ferrus Manus. This is just ludicrous. But hey, you know what? It's okay. Because before Fulgrim leaves, Horus hands him something, doesn't he?
He does, yes. As a symbol of trust, Horus hands Fulgrim the anatheme, or I always say anathema. Yeah. The audiobook version I listened to said anatheme, and I was like, that just doesn't sound right, man. But he hit it real hard. So
yeah, of course.
But yes, that is the weapon used to bring Horus down low. And so, when you're talking about in the conversation of things that everyone already thinks is impossible, of like a Primarch being laid low, or rebellion against the Emperor, to have physical proof that, one, my story is true, I was laid low, and like, this can kill a god. I don't know, it was a big deal. It was a big gift for him.
And it's like, wait a minute, you're giving Fulgrim another demon weapon?
I know.
He's already got one.
I know.
It's enough. And he's already over the top with one. You're giving him a second one?
Dude's going to need a gun locker for all his demon swords.
Now he's got plenty of buddies to talk to. Fulgrim does.
He's got
plenty of people to talk to him about this whole thing.
Never alone.
And the other piece of this is that it drives him so far into his madness that he starts to purge his legion of what he perceives as old parts of himself. That if he wants to become perfect, he needs to discard this old stuff.
Yep.
Because it's holding him back. And we now segue to Captain Solimer Demeter, which remembers the guy who kind of upstaged him on board the Diasporax ship. And he has been ordered by Fulgrim to go into and take a space station from a bunch of orcs.
Yep.
And for some reason, probably because he's so pissed off, Fulgrim perceives Demeter as a threat, which he is not, of course, but he sends him into this combat in an overextended position.
Yes.
He is just on his own. And interestingly enough, our buddies Salt Harvitz and Lucius arrive and save Demeter. And a Marine named Vespasian delivers the news of Demeter's rescue to Fulgrim. And Demeter is one of the few remaining Emperor's children that has not indulged.
Yes.
In the drugs and the enhancements and all this stuff. And Vespasian obviously voices his concern to Fulgrim and tells him that, and Fulgrim tells Vespasian to kind of calm him down and allay his concerns, that this is all part of the Emperor's grand plan for the Emperor's children. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, my son. And as part of it, he says, I have something I want to show you.
You're right. Come into my room of many wonders. I have a pleasure room.
And he shows him I think at this point, isn't the painting finished?
Yes, I believe at this point it is.
Yeah. And Vespasian just sees this wall covered with body parts and entrails and blood and feces. And the painting itself looks into Vespasian's soul.
Yep.
And what does it see?
It doesn't see what it wants, which is something to feed on. It's looking for something to tempt him or tear him. And it basically just like, I don't know, drifts through this dude's soul in a moment and is like, there's nothing here I can corrupt.
Yes.
Like, oh, wow.
And he's just too pure, and he suggests the demon in this picture that, hey, you know what, Fulgrim? You might want to kill this guy.
Yep.
And, of course, Fulgrim is happy to use his new little toy, the anathema, to just totally almost slice.
Yeah, he like almost bisects him.
Yeah, it's just horrible. So that stuff went on, and that whole scene was just horrid and horrible.
Yeah, but I guess I didn't realize, like, when I first read this many years ago, that he did his own soft purging first. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how successful it was, but it seems like that's what he was intending to do.
Yes.
And I guess I just forgot about that.
Yeah. It was disturbing, and it wasn't. It seemed a lot more subtle, I guess, to me. That I think probably is one of the reasons we didn't realize it, because it wasn't this hard. Send these guys down here. We're going to virus bomb them. It was much more under the table, I guess. So Fulgrim arrives with. So I guess we segue again, because Fulgrim goes to talk to Ferrus Manus and try to turn him. Well, things didn't go so well with that.
Right, yeah. So I actually, the way they did this, they kind of, like, we had that scene earlier where all the captains met as the two primarchs met, and they kind of just replay that scene, but this time, half the group has a dirty secret.
Yes.
And everyone's kind of eyeing up each other. No, I shouldn't say each other. The Emperor's children are eyeing up the Iron Hands in a big way. What parts did you want me to hit on here? As far as there's some great dialogue. I really like their arguments. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, it's just the battle and everything that takes place. I mean, of course, both of the Primarchs have their Terminator elite with them, their bodyguards, and all of a sudden, the Fulgrim's guys just turn and literally just decapitate.
Yeah, like in one strike, like the I don't know, Lord of the Rings when the elves are fighting, they just have that wall of, like, spitting blades.
Yes. It just boom, they're just gone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And obviously, Fulgrim at this point, because he is super enhanced, he's already a Primarch. He's been enhanced, and he just beats on Ferrus Manus.
Yeah, like in a mean way. In a real mean way.
He gets him down, and all of a sudden you realize that he doesn't have his sword with him. He's not using his demon sword. And he's kind of like he's going to kill his brother, but he doesn't kill his brother.
Yeah.
And that was just so weird.
Because he didn't have it in him. No,
he just didn't. He still wasn't 100% there.
Yep.
So he leaves his brother, and back aboard the Emperor's Children flagship, the Legion has put together their own recreation of the Laer Temple.
Yeah, so after they hang out with Ferrus Manus for a bit and really just kind of stir the bee's nest.
Yes.
They go have their own party, and so her name is Bekwa Kinska, the award-winning musician on their crew, puts together her orchestral debut after the Laer Temple is finally ready. And so, if I'm not mistaken, this is where they put up the demonic picture of Fulgrim, like, above the stage.
Yes.
And do the whole, like, party and music and stuff below it. But this is where I think things get insane. Like, this is basically this lady Bekwa has created new instruments based off the Laer designs.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm dry on my throat. But so she makes these crazy new weapons, and they're like weird backpack things that have, like, horns and sometimes strings and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The music starts. The play's going awesome. It's just a raucous of sounds. As people are trying to leave, like, they'll get killed if you try to leave the performance too early because it's so beautiful, kind of a thing. Like, one guy got beat down. And then over time, things just kind of keep escalating, and it ends with everybody screaming, fighting, and then demonettes are brought into the realm. Which like, because it's a whole. I mean, it's essentially a giant chaos ritual, right? They were so debaucherous they tore the veil.
Yes.
Was kind of the idea I picked up on anyway. But yeah, so now we have a chance to see like demons moving around, and they just start killing everybody in the stage. Space Marines rush up and grab the instruments because they can't stand to not hear the music anymore. Like, I want to hear it, I want to hear it. So they start learning to play these exotic instruments that look like, I don't know, kind of weapony, which we now know as the birth of the Noise Marine.
Yes. Yep.
Which I loved. When that happened, I was like, oh, yes.
Yeah, and they are blowing away people. They're blowing away demons with these noise weapons, and you're just going, oh my God, this is like 30K version of what's the word, the rock music that was like that, and we've seen those models that people made, like, of Kiss, the group Kiss.
Yes.
And you could just imagine the four guys from Kiss with these weapons, black and white, painted faces. You can kind of see these Marines like that, just hosing down everybody with these demon guitars, and it was just horrible. But actually, the whole event was a great success.
Yes. Absolutely. When you rock so hard, you rip a hole in reality. That's always a good time.
Oh, horrible. And actually, we're getting pretty close to the end here.
Yeah, so this is a book that I think, just to kind of throw in a thought here, I think it suffers from pacing.
Yes.
Because they try to cram in like, I was looking at the audiobook times, and I was like, I only have like 2 hours left in this book. We have to like go to a whole nother planet and fight a whole nother war still. Like, yeah, so it definitely, we can do the same, yada yada through a bit of it and get to the meat if you want. You're more than welcome to.
Oh, sure. I mean, so Fulgrim at this point, his legion is corrupted. He is fully gone over to chaos. And this is where he takes his new Noise Marines to Istvan, to the massacre, Istvan 5.
Yes.
And we see them in full regalia and full effect as they are just blowing away loyalist Marines. And this is really also where we kind of get this individual reenactment of Ferrus and Fulgrim.
Yep.
Confronting each other for the last time. And Fulgrim, obviously, we know that he kills Ferrus with the demon weapon. And it's when he completely gives himself over to the demon, because he kind of has a choice here. He's given a choice. And he's like, oh, yeah. This demon, has been his companion for a very long time, and he trusts him, and he knows the voice, and he basically just says, yeah, I'm giving myself up to this. And the really creepy thing at the end of this is that the demon takes Fulgrim's soul and places it in the painting of himself.
Yes.
Which Fulgrim still sees. What he sees is this beautiful picture of himself. Just this perfect human form, except for the eyes.
Yes, the eyes give it away.
Oh my gosh, man. You just see these eyes just saying and screaming, help me.
Yep.
Help me, please. When you look at this picture, and oh God, how horrific.
Yeah, and I do want to have an episode talking specifically about Istvan 5, because I think it's clearly one of the most important moments, but this is along this way, Eidolon took half the forces of the Loyalist and went to Istvan 3, which is where those books happen, and that's how we meet the Emperor's children there. And then Fulgrim is then sidelined because he failed to get Ferrus Manus, and is like, "You're gonna go set up and dig ditches on Istvan 5," and he's like, "That's not work befitting a glorious person like me."
Yes, yes.
Gets all whiny about it, but I just want to put that in there. That might be a good bonus episode or something like that we can do.
Yeah, because a lot of the other primark works tie into this piece. Like, look at the first Heretic. We end up on Istvan 5.
Yep.
And we see when the Galvorback become manifested.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, and then just the whole ebb and flow of the battle. There's more betrayal and all kinds of stuff. There's just so cool.
I think that's a great idea. So that's kind of the end of, one of the things, a classic story I want to tie in real quick is there's a story called The Picture of Dorian Gray.
Yes, of course.
And if anybody hasn't read it, you really should, because it's a very fascinating book on the human soul and what does that mean and who are you really? Who is behind the person we see? This reminded me so much of that because Dorian Gray's soul was in the picture, and it was a picture of his soul. And what he was, and this made me think about that.
Oh yeah,
when I saw that transformation of Fulgrim being trapped in there.
Well, and there's so many parallels, right? Like of just the excesses, and yeah, there's all kinds of stuff there with Dorian Gray. As far as like wrapping up the story,
yes,
it kind of, in my world, it kind of yada 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 is where it's like. So we finished the Istvan fight, which, of course, we just said we'll cover separately. And then, obviously, the Dark Mechanicum starts picking up all the leftover war machines. We got to get these bad boys back over to headed towards Terra. And what else happens here? All the Primarchs from the traders, they stand up on a plinth and basically have a little mini Ulanor.
Yes.
Where all the leaders get to stand on a plinth and talk about how great they are and celebrate their warriors. And what else? Was there something else you were missing? I mean, they kind of give like...
No, I think that was it. There are other pieces, but I think we hit the main points here.
Sweet. Yes. This was a hard book to cover just because of how much it darts around, not just through time, but perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, I mean, I'm telling you, listeners, like, we're going to read ones that are not as popular. Probably the Alpha Legion one being the next one that we do.
Yes, Legion, yep.
Yep, but this is one that, like, I just really implore you to go pick up and read. It's so interesting, and even if you don't like Emperor's Children or Fulgrim, I think it does a great job of just bringing events, moving stuff forward, and playing with stuff that we've heard before, and then a few things we haven't, and...
No, I think that's a really important point, is that it also moves us through points in the Heresy, and it brings pieces of the Heresy into clarity that we didn't have.
Yes.
And answers some questions. And so I think it's important from a wider context of the story of the Heresy itself.
Yeah. Yeah, totes. So, as we just spoiled, we're going to be doing Legion next, which is all about the Alpha Legion. Specifically how they engage worlds and how they recruit and all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah. And one of the things we're introduced to as well is the concept of, how I say that, we're going to have to edit this, is perpetuals, the concept of perpetuals.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Who are humans who never die, essentially. But that's, again, a thing that's introduced here that we really haven't seen before. So, it's very important.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we'll be covering all that here pretty soon, and I invite you to drag out your books and join us. Dan, do you have any last thoughts for us today?
No, I think, again, there are some books we're going to cover that aren't on the, aren't on the main marquee.
Yeah.
But to your point, they are important books to read, to understand better, not only individual legions and primarchs, but the Heresy as well.
Yeah, and hey, nothing else. You can listen to us instead of reading the books you don't want, and you'll get the broad strokes. So
There you go. Excellent.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much, friends, for hanging out with us, and we will catch you next time. Until then, the Emperor protects.